Javas, talk to me about, because there has been several efforts, and Dr. Makali Mulu here says that the government can source its revenues from tax loans, sale of assets, or the appropriations in aid. But when this is happening, I remember that during the first term of President Kenyatta, that is, there was talk about all these overlapping state corporations and how they needed to be rationalized, maybe merge some or drop off some. It never really happened. Now here we are with the proposal to sell some of these assets. How much of this is actually the intervention or the action, deliberate action by the government of Kenya, or is it pressure from international organizations?
Well, any schooled eye, just as much as an unschooled eye, will appreciate that we are in an economic distress. And the circumstance and the reality of the economic turmoil in which we are cannot be gainsaid. And appreciating that when it comes to matters privatization, as has been discussed here and belabored by my co-panelists this morning, we need to appreciate that the matter of privatization is a revenue-raising rivulet. And that's what the government is aiming at. And also when you appreciate the various, the justification that has been provided in the privatization program. Now, of course, we have got multiple parastatals, and some that one could say are duplicitous in terms of the kind of programs that a merger would make much more sense. And I think when we look at the manner in which colossal amounts are used by the government to run and sustain some of these entities, it would make sense that, well, a question of merger of some would be very vital. Secondly, the aspect of privatization. Now, of course, it is important as altogether curious, the way my relative Okango is averring here, that the issue of privatization calls for public participation that is akin to a referendum. I don't know whether it's important for us to draw parallels, but the utility of the word akin to a referendum itself, I think, creates a loss of thought, because a referendum, for purposes of privatization, one would argue, when it comes to nationalization, would you also require such kind of effort? I'm sure you would not. But the argument that has been made by the petitioners in the issue that has been now granted conservatory orders by Justice Muita, of course, raise critical issues of law and constitution. And I agree. Because when you look at even the Privatization Act, there's the issue of public participation, there's the issue of being pliant to Article 201 of the Constitution on the principles of public finance management, there's the issue of being pliant to the principles of good governance in Article 10 of the Constitution, and those are critical issues of governance. Those principles of governance are pillars of good governance in this country. However, we must also appreciate that perpetually, our coquetry with hollow politics is what also leads us into the kind of drain that we find ourselves. Now, the game of musical chairs. It is important for Honorable Raila Odinga and ODM, as Okango argues, that they raise critical issues of public interest about some of these assets. Yes, on the 26th of July, 2013, Honorable Wario, Cabinet Secretary for Sports and Culture, as he then was, gazetted the KICC as a national monument. Well, of course, we know any gazette notice can be degazetted. But yes, the KICC has got sentimental value and national symbolism, even in our legal tender, and that's crucial. But we also appreciate that there are some other parastatals whose disposition in whole or part of their assets or sale of stakes in those assets would help us pull our socks up to around the anklets in the economic circumstances that we find ourselves in, especially the debt burden that we are in.